Traffic Safety Commission comments. Commissioners?
I'm good.
So, as part of my commentary, I had submitted a report, we'll call it a report, on the work plan. So I spent about a week working up a relatively detailed work plan after I heard that the staff wasn't going to bring a work plan to us. And I just want to interject too that I thank Doug for his kind words earlier, and he's the consummate professional. And the tense questions that I was asking are not directed at Doug, so we appreciate all your work that you do for the commission. Okay, so the work plan, though, speaking about tension, so I put together this plan, and I hope people have had a chance to look at it. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it. There's 15 items on it. I would encourage us to, when we're looking at the plan, try to do a long-term plan rather than a short-term, like just look at a year and just have a couple things on it. As Doug has pointed out many times tonight, the work plan defines what we're going to be doing, so we want it to be comprehensive. I guess I could just jump right to saying I want to make a motion just like for the municipal code to keep the fire lit. I'd like to make a motion maybe after other people provide their input on putting the work plan that I proposed, and if anyone has any input to add that into it, as the first and only item of regular business on our next meeting, so that we can really focus on it, unless there's some really time-critical agenda item that needs to be added. Another option I thought of is a special meeting. The city council holds workshops for these types of things where they only discuss the one item and they spend several hours in more of a workshop format. But I don't think I need to go into emphasizing how important the work plan is. And so I can make the motion now, or I can wait and see if anyone else has any.
Yeah, let's just wait for everybody to make comments and then we do motions.
Okay.
Commissioner Paul? Commissioner Garcia?
One of the education issues that was brought up before was to go over the speed limit laws and the way we set speed limits. And we did that not too long ago, and so I'd like to suggest that maybe we move some other things up in priority that we could do first, like maybe this multimodal level of service versus the traditional level of service. Another one I think would be helpful for us is to understand the different classes of bike facilities. There's class 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they're not well understood. The Planning Commission thought that class 4 was something that they could use for the promenade, and they can't, but they didn't know that. So these are things that are pretty important, I think. Maybe we can prioritize those, bring those up for education purposes, and then we get them in the minutes, and then other people can read them. So, and suggest that maybe, like I said, instead of the speed limit thing, which is in the minutes, maybe our new people probably wouldn't mind reading those rather than bringing it up again as soon as we, I think we just did it last year. So that's my input.
Is this something that education-wise, do we have to put in a plan for us to have something like that come up, or?
Yeah, as I said last meeting, our intent is to organize the work plan into informational, educational, and engineering groups. And that would be an educational part of it. So then those are the ones that come in information only. You know, those are that, you know, I think sometimes, at least I've heard, and I've heard a lot tonight, but when I hear this information only, that's, you know, think of that as educational. you know, and bringing you up to speed on it and the TDM. This is to get you up to speed or to inform you about that. So those are educational parts. We would have that as a little bit more wider net so that we could bring in educational items like this.
Okay, sounds good. Commissioner Hunter?
Yeah, I just had one question, maybe and a couple other things. I noticed there's new traffic calming on Gateway.
Yes.
It looks interesting and fun to go through there fast, you know, because it turns, but I don't ever remember seeing it coming here. And I asked somebody that, and they don't remember seeing that coming here either. So I was curious, because we usually do get traffic calming stuff showing up through here.
That's a good point. So
Thank you.
that was a, that wasn't part of the CRTMP. It's not a residential area. It was part of a development, which was Uptown Bressy Ranch, and that was a condition of approval. And for the most part, I don't think development review has ever come here. So there's a lot of conditions of approval for parking, for traffic, the village master plan, the proposal you just mentioned about the promenade. Those typically don't come here, but again, the work plan, we should make that very clear so that there's no question whether it does come here or it doesn't come here. And I think I've driven it. I think it's a pretty interesting, innovative traffic calming. And if you'll notice, we kept your bike lane intact on Gateway, and I drove it at 25 is very comfortable. So I think it works very well. And I just heard yesterday that the bus, there's a bus tour that goes through there, and the bus went through it fine.
Yeah, it goes through fine. It is a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit road, though, right?
It is, and then you just, for that, we would put that in, but it's a 40-mile-per-hour road because before that was put in, we recorded 85th percentile speeds that supported 40 miles per hour. The residents that were complaining about speeding and traffic, so this was a condition of approval to bring down that speed. We will very soon go out and resurvey that area. I'd be surprised if it stays at 40. It'll probably come down closer to what you can go through comfortably through the chicanes.
Well, I go through comfortably at 40, but that's okay. But that's me. When we get to motions, we're almost there, but I'm going to suggest we do a subcommittee, so start putting in your brains to do that letter, which is a less than quorum group of people putting it together.
Ad hoc?
An ad hoc committee, yes. For our letter writing to go to the city council. So I will suggest that at least Mona and Steve are on that, and anybody else under the
Okay.
one more person.
I saw, kind of piggybacking, his speed, there's a speed feedback sign on northbound, southbound College. And I believe it's on Carlsbad side.
Is it near the school?
Yeah, I'm wondering what started, because it's not residential, right? It's right, I believe it's right before you have to take a left to go towards the school, but what started that? Complaints or development or
What was that?
You got
We-
somebody over here is going to answer.
southbound on College, right before Tamarack?
It's part of a CIP project, but I'll have Masood come
Okay.
in for the first time.
That was one of my first requests that came to me from a resident, a lady who was very unhappy with the speed going through the school area. And just wanted to get to feel how bad the problem is. So I asked Jim, one of our staff engineers, to install those to collect the data before this spring break. That was done last week, and I think it's still in place this week, to just get a feel for the nature and extent of the problem. And I'll be using that data I'm in contact with her to explain why things are the way they are.
Okay.
So
And I
it's a
have visited the
temporary-
area to see how this, and I was very surprised, very pleasantly surprised to see a number of walkers going to that school.
So it's a temporary. It's
Yeah,
a
it is not a
station,
permanent thing. It's one of those, one of our 10 units that are portable and we move from location
But
to
it's
location.
just, this one was south. Is there one northbound too?
There is
Just
one northbound too, I believe.
on the side of the school?
Yes.
Okay. So, are you gonna bring back any findings or any?
I'll be more than happy to share that information with you.
Because I mean, it's very educational, not just for me as a resident driving through there, I would like to know what's happening. So if we had put it in here for the forum and we put it in the minutes, it would just let all the residents know
Right,
what
it-
the city is working on, and they are interested in the safety around the school and so on. So it's not
Right.
just for us, the 7 people.
Right, again, that education element is going to, I think the speed feedback signs have a good history of people liking them and being receptive to it. A lot of people don't realize how fast they're
The ones
going.
on I-5 right now are just great. 55,
And then
that's going
one
in.
thing that I will be doing differently, I will not use them to just flash the speeds all the time. I just I ask Jim to program them so it will only flash when they go above a posted speed. So people are not testing their speedometers or other things, and I think it's more catching to the average driver when they go and they realize they're going above the speed limit.
That sounds good, thank you.
And then one more on the chicanes and I will be visiting with the resident tomorrow, neighborhood, about that, to just explain to them his history and how they came about, and it was part of a development, and it wasn't, again, I'm still learning what the different things that have evolved over the past few years and past few months. So that's an educational tool for me and the resident.
Sounds good, thank you so much.
I have one question.
Yes.
In regards to with the traffic, there's a new development northeast. I think it's over by, it's the northeast part of Carlsbad. I think it's called the Preserve. There are some permanent roundabouts.
By the Walmart?
Walmart, yeah.
Okay.
There are some permanent roundabouts on this, and it seems like there is a community that is kind of curious and wanted to see if there's any information about the placement of crosswalks. It seems like there's like a double circle around or a roundabout, and then in the middle there's a crosswalk, and the concern is taking that turn at a certain speed and the visibility of someone crossing by, it might be a little bit too late before.
I have heard of the development, I haven't driven by it, I'll be more than happy to take a look and also prepare some information and respond back to the resident or to the commission.
Okay, thank you.
So now I'm just gonna reinforce as we noticed, the work plan is the most important tool that we have as a commission as to what we can do to implement the mobility part, and what we can work on and what the residents are gonna hear from our commission. So I do agree with Steve on his suggestion of having this. As you can see, we don't want to keep everybody here for so many hours, so work plan is quite a bit of time. If we just have one item, I think it will be more than enough for that one day, unless, like he suggested, we have any urgent items that need to be approved.
Do you think, before you make the motion, you said, how do you want the format to
I
be?
think
Did
that
you want a
it's
different
like
format
two
than this
parts.
to be formal? Did you want a workshop setting, or if you could be clear on that, that would help us set up an environment that would help
I mean, it
you.
depends on how other people want to do it. Chair Gokin can run the meeting and direct it as far as I'm concerned, but we
Do
can
we have
do a
any
workshop
other
format.
input?
Well, are you gonna eliminate the public comment in that portion also?
No, we can't do that.
No, we're not.
It would just be more, is this okay, sitting here, would we pick another room with chairs, but it still have to be,
I think we should do
have an
like a
agenda.
two-part, to put it on, to have like a two-part to it, maybe have like a rough look on the first meeting and see, okay, these items are on it, and then a second part, then we agree on the finalizing. And is this staff planning on bringing any work plan, ideas, drafts, anything?
That was gonna be my, like, I was gonna ask Mr. Bilsey the question, so for our May meeting, can staff develop their own plan to implement the mobility element, including a comprehensive list of required items and a program timeline, along with the selection of goals and tasks that can go on the first year's work plan? And then I'm gonna make the motion. If that's not possible, then I would move that we would just go ahead and look at the plan that I created as a starting point, and then other commissioners can join in on that. So I guess the question is can staff by the next meeting come up with something as, comprehensive.
Well, I'm gonna set a tone, maybe if you could, so you're not, the commission is not supposed to direct staff to do work, but we do know we have to get a work plan together, so if you can, I think if the motion sticks to directing us on what you expect it to be, as opposed to directing us, like next meeting, you'll have it this way, and it'll be the first item, I think, I'm hearing that it's a high priority, and you'd like it to be the focus of a meeting, if not the only one, and you'd like to have it in a format that looks at long-term needs to implement the general plan mobility element, and after that, you would like to then break that down into what's reasonable for for next year's work plan, and you would like to have it next month, if I.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a motion I've written down here. I'll read it, and then if you have any input, you're free to provide it. I move that we put the work plan report that I provided this month as the first regular item of business on our next meeting agenda, with no other non-time critical items on that agenda, and that staff be requested to, 1, develop their own comprehensive list of items and program timeline required for implementation of the mobility element, and 2, develop a work plan for the coming year derived from that comprehensive list, both of those for deliberation on that item of business.
So we're gonna take the second part off from us directing staff. Yeah.
Well, I used the word request, so I'm requesting that I'm moving that we put the plan that I presented in the report as the first item on the agenda, but we're requesting that staff then create their own, and then we can discuss their own, and then look at the one I presented today as well at the next meeting.
If I could, if you could keep the item, what I would recommend is the item B, to develop a work plan, and then that could be an attachment to a staff report to make sure that it doesn't get lost in the discussion, so that the agenda item wouldn't be to review necessarily, your Commissioner Linke's list, as opposed to develop a work plan and as we just said, to go for a long-term and a short-term. And then we could prepare a staff report to get the work plan and have yours as an attachment, as opposed to making it seem like you're working on your own as a committee. I mean, that would just be my recommendation, but if that's the motion, that's the motion.
How do the other commissions did their work, do you know?
They waited for us. We're really taking the lead. We're the only ones that really had a date stamped on them, and so it was a higher priority. So I've asked a couple, and I don't know if anybody else has gotten farther, but I can
So-
do that.
I don't want to be controversial and create more tension, but at the I forget when it was, May, I think, of 2018, the goal that the municipal code would be completed on April 2019. There was another goal that the work plan also be completed by April of 2019. So this has been lingering for months and months and months, and nothing has gotten done. So that's why I just spent a week, and I thought I'm going to come up with my own idea. My concern is that if staff doesn't come back with something that's really comprehensive and ready to go, that we, in order to continue to keep the momentum going, that we want to discuss something. So I don't really care what the format is. I can change the motion to reflect what Mr. Vilsey said.
Do you have any input?
Well, I don't think it ought to be the only agenda item, but we can take all the educational stuff out if there's something needs to be voted on. And again, I'd like to see, we are doing the traffic safety.
Yes, we can
And
take it out.
Lieutenant Calderwood says she's got stuff that she wants to present. I think we can limit it down, and we could put the lieutenant up first, so she doesn't have to sit through all of this stuff. And then even the comments can be forward in the deal, so the majority of people, if they want to leave, they can take off. But I agree, we need to focus on it.
Okay,
So we still have to do the regular job that we do too.
So let me change my motion to say, I move that we request that staff, 1, develop a comprehensive list of items and the timeline required for implementation of the mobility element. And 2, develop a work plan for the coming year derived from that comprehensive list, both for deliberation on that item of business as the first regular item of business on our next meeting agenda, with minimal other items to give us time to properly deliberate. And that my version be included as an attachment for discussion purposes.
Have a second?
Second.
Ready for vote?
We're not gonna, we don't discuss after the motion, or there-
Okay.
we should.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want
Yeah, sure.
clarification. So I'm wary of coming up with something on our own, and so my preference would be, I think a meeting of dedicated is a great idea and all that, but I would say that we would not present it as a plan, but a series of recommendations for elements of the plan, and by which then somehow, whatever the appropriate protocol is, whether it's attached to something or however it works, that then that be given to staff as, you know, our input into the process. So it's a little less intense, as you might say, that there were recommendations. So that's my comment on that. And then as far as the format, I think something like that does require more deliberate. This is not the right format for it. So somehow, if we were in another room around a round table, so that we can look at each other and talk to each other and that sort of thing. So those are my comments.
I don't think it needs to change, but if you don't mind, I can work with the chair and we can decide what the best format and the location, if that's agreeable.
And again, this is not gonna go to council for a vote in April. Now it's only the name and the description, I just wanna clarify.
Okay, I'm sorry, we're talking about two different things, I think, right?
Yeah, so this is the work plan. This is not the description of our duties or the name. This is what is gonna say
Correct.
that we're gonna cover.
I understand.
But it's not gonna go
understand.
to vote for
I
the
understand.
council. Okay, I just wanna clarify.
I understand,
everybody.
but the proposal is to ask staff to do some things to match what we're trying to accomplish at the next meeting. And I think we ought to, I'm not sure how that is realistic, other than we could do it. But it seems to me that if we redefine this as a list of recommendations, that would go to staff and that would guide them in their thinking of developing the work plan. I find it hard to believe that the staff would not, for other commissions, would not be very, very much part of the process. And it's great that we're being aggressive and all that, but I think we can be less intense or whatever by just saying, look, these are the things that we're interested in, that we foresee are interested by the community, and that can start your process.
That's how I heard it.
Yeah, so I used it as I changed the motion to say that my plan was an attachment, and then staff obviously can refer to that list when they're making their own if they
Okay,
so
so,
choose.
yeah.
But it's available for discussion generally.
Okay, that's.
Okay, we're ready to vote?
Yeah. Just one comment, that Commissioner Lenke made that list, that work plan, from the comments that we had provided to the staff earlier. So, I mean, he just rewrote them and put them in a format that included things that all of us had presented before. So this is why when we read it, or when I read it, I thought, oh, this is fine. I mean, I've seen this before. Oh, yeah, that's some of the stuff I put in there. So, and I'm sure all the rest of you did too. So it was just a whole lot of work, and I think we should include it because it really is, I mean, he compiled it in a way that's easier for the staff to work with, but I think that's appropriate for us to do it the way it was suggested.
Yes, so we're gonna vote now. And thank you, Commissioner Lenke, for all the hard work and the time put in. We really appreciate it.
somebody didn't lock in yet.
We're waiting on Pete. Oh, wait, okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Sure.
Please note that it passed unanimously with Commissioner Johnson being absent. Okay, do we have, don't have any more comments, public comments? No? Thank you so much, everybody.
Ad hoc committee, I told you.
Oh, we have one, we do have one more motion.
We do. So I make a motion, we create an ad hoc committee that includes at least the chair and Linky and one other person, if they want to be on it, to craft a letter that will go forward to the council.
Right.
Do I get a
Does
second?
anybody else want to be on it? No? Just throwing it down there, you know? All right, well, then, and if a third person wants to be on there, we have to limit it to 3, so we're under a quorum, but at least those 2, so that's my
It could be
motion.
2.
Yeah, it could be 2, if a third person wants to join. Do I have a second?
I'll say.
All right. One more vote there.
All right.
You almost thought you were going home.
Anybody else with discussion? Anybody want discussion?
Well, I guess one discussion point was, do you want to be on the letter so that you were concerned and you voted against doing it, but maybe if you were to help review the letter, that would make you more comfortable with what we're doing? It's up to you.
Yeah, I'm fine. I think you'll do fine.
We'll be very,
I
we'll be
think
very
that's a
professional.
great idea. I think that's a great idea. If you want to be involved, more than welcome.
Yeah.
At a minimum, we could send like what we think is the final copy, and you could take a look at it and make sure that you're comfortable with it.
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to review it or participate in it.
And we have to make sure that that letter has to reflect things that have been already said. We
Right.
can't create, this ad hoc committee cannot create a new comment that we didn't discuss, so.
Right, part of my
I think it'd
motion
be
was,
good
part
to
of my
get-
motion for that was as reflected by the discussion we had tonight, so it'll only include things we discussed at tonight's.
Yeah, so we'd have to include Bill's objections on certain specific things, and we can have you review it to make sure that your opposition's reflected or not over bypassed.
Okay, I'm fine with it.
Sounds good. Voting?
I'm locked in.
Please
Good.
note that it passed anonymously. Johnson being absent, and we are done at 8:11. We're gonna adjourn. That's it. Thank you guys for your
Oh,
patience.
man.